The rain had been falling for hours, turning the city streets into long rivers of cold silver. But she kept walking, clutching a thin shawl around her trembling shoulders. Her name was Amina, a woman who had once dreamed of quiet mornings, warm kitchens, and a life where she didn't have to choose between dignity and survival. But life had a way of stripping people down to their last fragile pieces, and tonight, she felt like she had already lost too many. Her shoes were soaked, her hair stuck to her cheeks, and her stomach ached with the hollow, painful hunger that came when you had not eaten in almost 2 days. Yet she forced her feet forward toward the only bakery still glowing with light at the late hour, hoping, praying, that she could afford even the smallest piece of bread. Before you hear what happens next, if you believe in kindness, second chance, and the power of compassion, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us grow this community of heart-touching stories that remind us of the good still left in the world. Amina stepped inside the bakery. Warmth washed over her, unfamiliar and almost painful against her cold skin. The scent of fresh bread filled the small shop. Golden loaves lined the shelves, and pastry glistened behind the glass counter like treasures from a world she no longer belonged to. Her lips parted slightly, not in greed, but in longing, as she approached the counter with slow, hesitant steps. Her fingers shook as she pulled out a small folded tissue, unwrapping the coins inside. The cashier braced himself, watching her with that expression people used when they were torn between pity and impatience. Amina's voice barely rose above a whisper as she tried to steady her breath. She asked if she could have just one slice of bread. Not a loaf, not a pastry, only a single slice, and placed the small heap of coins on the counter. The cashier stared at the coins, then back at her, and shook his head. It wasn't enough. She felt her throat tighten, something hot pressing behind her eyes. She nodded weakly, scooped back the coins with trembling hands, and mumbled an apology. As she turned to leave, willing herself not to break down inside the store, but that was when she noticed him. He had been sitting silently at one of the corner tables, a man in a simple black shirt with sleeves rolled up, staring into a half-finished cup of coffee. His posture was calm, his presence grounded, but there was something about his eyes, a depth, a quiet grief, that made him look like someone who understood what it meant to lose things you couldn't get back. His name was Zayan, though she didn't know that yet. Nor did she know that he wasn't just another customer hiding from the rain. He was the CEO of a major construction company, a single father who had spent the last few years balancing board meetings with packing school lunches and learning how to braid his daughter's hair. He had power, influence, and wealth. Yet tonight, he looked like a man trying to forget how heavy his own life felt. He had watched the entire scene. The hesitation, the handful of coins, the quiet shame, and something inside him stirred like a memory he wished he could rewrite. He stood up before she reached the door. His voice was gentle but firm when he spoke, telling her to sit down. She froze, unsure whether to obey or flee. But he wasn't scolding, and he wasn't staring at her like she was less. He simply pointed to the chair across from him and said the words she never expected: "Sit down. Eat first." Amina felt stunned, her feet refusing to move at first. She had grown used to rejection, not kindness, but the warmth in his voice cracked something open inside her. Slowly she sat. The cashier, prompted by his nod, brought warm slices of bread, butter, and tea without charging her. She wrapped her hands around the cup, watching the steam rise, trying not to cry. Zayan didn't pry. He didn't ask her to explain her poverty or justify her hunger. He simply let her eat. But as the first bite touched her tongue, all the emotions she had been swallowing for months surged through her. She blinked hard, swallowing the food like it might disappear if she hesitated. It tasted like safety, like hope, things she hadn't felt in a long while. Zayan watched her with quiet empathy. He wasn't thinking about the CEO title that people respected or the reputation that kept him distant from the world. Instead, he remembered the nights, after his wife passed away, when he'd sit alone with a plate of untouched food and wonder how he was going to raise a child while carrying grief in his chest. He remembered the times strangers had offered small kindnesses that pulled him out of darkness without even realizing it. Amina finished eating, wiping her eyes discreetly. But Zayan gently placed another plate in front of her. It had been years since someone had looked at her with humanity and not suspicion. She finally whispered thank you, but her voice cracked, revealing the exhaustion behind her composure. She hadn't always lived like this. She once had a small job at a garment shop, a simple room to sleep in, and a mother she took care of. But when her mother fell sick, the medical bills swallowed everything she had. The shop owner replaced her, saying he needed someone who didn't come late or leave early to rush her mother to the clinic. She lost her job, then her room, and finally her mother. After that, life became a series of places to hide from the rain and night, where hunger felt like punishment for a failure she couldn't prevent. Zayan listened without interrupting. The rain outside tapped against the glass like a soft drumbeat, And in that dimly lit bakery, lives equally broken in different ways found a shared silence that warmed instead of hurt. He finally spoke, telling her that everyone goes through storms and sometimes all it takes is one person to offer a little shelter. He didn't mention his wealth or who he was in the corporate world. He didn't want her to feel indebted, he only wanted her to feel seen. When she tried to insist on paying back someday, he shook his head. He told her that kindness wasn't a debt. It was a gift meant to be passed on when she had the strength. Amina lowered her head, her tears slipping down freely now. Not the tears of despair she had known for months, but the tears that came when the world surprised her with something good. But fate wasn't done with them. Just as they stepped outside together, the rain slowing to a soft drizzle, a young girl ran toward them with bright eyes and wet sneakers. She flung her arms around Zayan's waist, giggling breathlessly. This was Noor, his daughter, a child full of light, the anchor of his life. Noor immediately noticed Amina's drenched clothes and wrapped her own jacket around her without hesitation. It was instinctive for her. Kindness had been raised into her bones by a father who understood its value. Amina tried to refuse, but the child insisted. Zayan smiled softly, the softness that only fathers carry, and told Amina that she could keep it. Noor then proudly announced that she and her father had just delivered leftover meals to a shelter, something they did every week. Amina felt her heart swell painfully. These two, a CEO with a gentle soul and a little girl with a generous heart, stood in the street, like a small beam of light in her dark world. Zayan asked if she had somewhere safe to sleep. Amina hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. She didn't want Charity. She didn't want him to think she was trying to take advantage. But Noor, young and sincere, grabbed her hand and said that no one should be cold at night. And that simple sentence, from a child, broke the last bit of resistance inside her. Zayan arranged a temporary stay for her at a small, reputable women's shelter where he often donated. The staff treated her kindly, giving her clean clothes, warm meals, and a sense of safety she hadn't felt in years. Over the next week, Noor insisted they visit her. Amina slowly transformed, from a woman surviving day to day into someone who could breathe again. With Zayan's quiet guidance, she applied for jobs, regained confidence, and started piecing her life back together. He never forced help. He simply walked beside her, offering support when she asked, celebrating her progress when she succeeded, and encouraging her when she doubted herself. Amina eventually found a job as an assistant accountant at a community office, a stable position that allowed her to rebuild her life with dignity. But deep down, she knew her transformation wasn't just because of food, shelter, or employment. It was because someone had looked at her not as a burden or a failure, but as a human being deserving of care. And slowly, gently, something else grew between them. Not romance at first, not attraction, but trust. A connection built on shared wounds and quiet compassion. Noor adored her, and Amina grew to love the little girl like the daughter she dreamed of having one day. Months passed, and the cold nights of hunger became memories she no longer feared. She had a new home, a new purpose, and a new circle of people who believed in her. And though she tried many times to thank Zayan, he always told her the same thing, that she had saved herself, he had only opened a door. Before we reach the ending, if this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps us continue bringing powerful human stories to you. And now, a special request, please comment below. Kindness matters. If you believe every small act of compassion can change someone's life. In the end, Amina found herself standing again in front of the same bakery where everything had changed. This time, she wasn't trembling. She wasn't hungry. She walked inside and bought 2 slices of bread. One for herself, one for the memory of who she used to be. As she stepped back outside, she saw Zayan and Noor waiting for her with smiles that warmed her heart. They walked together down the quiet street, 3 souls bound by a moment of unexpected kindness that changed all their lives forever. Some stories remind us that help doesn't always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives as a warm meal, a safe place to sit, and a gentle voice saying, "Eat first. You deserve to."